Elias, KOROSIS, thank you so much for joining me here at the IPEM TV studio. It's a big event, thousands of people here coming through. You've got your booth here, you're talking to lots of people. What are the kind of conversations people are having at a high level about the industry?
Thanks, Sam, for having us. It's an exciting time to be at the event, and obviously it's a wonderful thing to see EPEM doing so well. We've been backers of this event since the beginning. The crucial thing is we've had a great, I would say, 10, 15 years in private equity, and we've come at a more of a crucible moment now with rising interest rates. So a lot of people are interested in what's happening to the market, what's happening across private equity, across private credit. So we're spending quite a lot of time in working through what parts of private equity are able to deliver the performance that has been promised to a lot of the LPs throughout the ups and downs in the market, in particular throughout the interest rate cycle.
Do you think that the industry finds now, with a very different macro backdrop, do you think the industry as a whole finds it an exciting time to actually show a bit of alpha, or is it a time of worry?
It's interesting because I think a lot of people can be quite worried, particularly I would say on the leveraged buyout side, where you've had I guess a complacency of being able to operate with zero interest rates for so long, and so it's very natural for people to ask, okay, what happens in that space? But I think it is a very exciting time for private equity as a whole to prove its mettle. And so far, actually, the fact that you can count in fingers of one hand situations that have gone awry, I think it's a good initial test. But our strategy, what we at Hermes have been focused on for quite a long time now, has not been the levered end of private equity. It's been on the mid-market, lower mid-market, and growth capital side of things that doesn't require leverage to deliver the returns. So we feel that strategy call was certainly the right call through the cycle, and it's coming through at the moment.
Yeah. So do you see out there in the market too much leverage then? And obviously there's a lot of companies that are going to have to delever, and they're looking for solutions to that. And maybe that's partly why private credit, we're seeing more and more of their involvement. And
certainly where the managers raise very large funds, the large buyout end, which I guess dominates the quantum of private equity, definitely has had a lot of very high leverage deals. So we're going to see how these work through. I'm still quite positive that they're going to manage, but clearly a bigger piece of the value creation pie goes to the private credit providers to those deals that are now earning 10+% in some of those transactions. If you look at the potential across the different strategies in private equity, we have been focused on that mid-market, lower mid-market end, and I think there the situation is clearly a lot more balanced. So we're not that concerned about high leverage. Certainly in our portfolio, we don't have many instances of high leverage where we're starting to get into that. How do you replace that capital conversation?
Let's talk a little bit about your business. I mean, you're quite well known for innovation. You're quite well known for having a focus on innovation in Europe. Tell me a little bit about how innovation plays through in the business, and your funds, and the kind of work you're doing in that space.
I mean, thanks for saying that. Essentially, we've created an innovation strategy, which is our European growth capital strategy, to take advantage of what we saw 10 years ago as coming through as a huge shift into the European private equity ecosystem. So historically, 20 years ago, there was essentially no growth capital in Europe. Growth capital was an American strategy that developed quite well with the likes of Summit, TA, GA 20 years ago. And 10 years ago, it started to become a reality in Europe. And so we created a dedicated strategy for it, which we called the Innovation Fund, because essentially it's about scaling innovation. It's not about the early stage of innovation. That's addressed by venture capital. We are about how do you scale the innovation in Europe, which at a general, I would say, marketplace and political level, that's a huge opportunity for Europe. There are a lot of very interesting companies doing very interesting new things, but need the capital to grow from a few million in revenue to tens and hundreds of millions of revenue, and that's where growth capital comes in. So scaling innovation is the game, and we've created a dedicated fund for it. We're now on the third generation of it, second fund vintage of it, and we are very happy to be playing in that space.
And do you think it's a particularly competitive space in Europe? I mean, you're talking about how it started more in the US as a strategy and it's come to Europe, and obviously you're sort of pioneering a bit in what you're doing, but do you feel that as more alternatives money has come in and the growth of alternatives generally, that strategy is also one that others are picking up?
It's very interesting. It got quite competitive, particularly during COVID, where you felt a lot of people from the venture space wanting to play in the later stage growth space, and people from the buyout space also coming into it. So it got a lot more competitive here, and then suddenly I think people saw that it's not as easy a game. I would call it a lot of the momentum investing has come out now because people are not, they saw the dangers of being a momentum investor, and you're down to a fewer, more pure play growth capital market participants, which include a handful of others. But yes, it is not, I would say, as competitive, yet nearly as competitive as the mid-market buyout strategies that we see both in Europe and in the US.
Yeah, so some of that sort of froth and tourist capital is kind of gone. The market's kind of got itself into a place where the right kind of people are there.
Absolutely. The momentum players, I think, have generally gone, and so we're down to people that have a strategic commitment to the asset class. That can include people that have graduated from venture, but it's certainly not the momentum play that we saw during COVID.
Can I ask you a little bit then about European equity capital markets then, as a sort of a possible exit for you and for some of these companies, the next stage that they go on? Presumably IPOs is something they would be thinking about amongst other options. What's your view generally on the IPO market?
So first of all, I can't claim to be an expert on the ECM desk anymore. I have to say we're lucky, I don't know whether lucky or skillful, that most of the stuff that we invest in tends to exit in strategics or in private equity. So we don't have to deal with IPO as the main route of exit for a lot of our investments. I think it's the part that captures most of the newspaper headlines, so it captures more of the attention. But the reality in a lot of what we do, and I think a lot of what the industry is like, is successful stories, exit into strategic players, and increasingly to larger buyout funds that have a consolidation agenda. So we love that play. We absolutely love to invest in small companies that mature into targets of the competitors to Vista and Thoma Bravo now in Europe, which are, we have a number of them developing in a European context.
Yeah. And can I ask another question, again, related to the same innovation strategy? Do you think Europe as a whole has the right kind of regulation in place to foster this kind of culture of innovation and these growth companies coming through? Do you think they get the kind of support and landscape they need, or do you think there's still work to do?
There's multiple things that need to come through, and regulation is only one of the pillars. I would say culture is a very important part, and I have seen a huge shift in Europe to what we would have seen 20 years ago. So 25 years ago, when you were entering the job market, you were thinking about becoming a strategy consultant or working for a big industrial. I think you see a lot more entrepreneurship now in the game in Europe, and that's something that I don't think is appreciated enough. I think in a global context, people are still looking at Europe as a fairly in a more old-timer way, and the reality on the ground is that there's quite a lot of innovation and enthusiasm for creating new things happening, and what has helped have been success stories that are local, and that's what I tell all the policymakers in every different geography that we see whenever we meet with sovereign funds or other policy-backed organizations. You need local successes. It is not to create a dream for a young person. It's not enough to have something that happened in San Francisco. It needs to have happened in Italy, in Greece, in Spain, in Portugal, in Finland, and people then see it close enough to them, and then they can understand that that's entrepreneurship can be a journey that they can go after. That depends on a venture capital scene. That's not what we do, but we've been blessed by a very healthy venture capital scene in Europe over the last 10 years. And now having the entrepreneurship and the venture capital then creates these graduates that we invest in at the growth capital stage. So we're very happy with the development of the marketplace as it is, and I think it's very different to what the headlines in the newspapers look like.
Yeah. Well, look, I don't want to take up any more of your time, so thanks so much for speaking to us. It's really fascinating what you're doing in the innovation space, and have a great IPEM.
Thanks so much for having us, Sam. Appreciate it.